So a couple days ago, I was scrolling on eBay and I came across a 21.5-inch 4K Apple iMac running macOS Ventura. Now this device did not come with any accessories whatsoever. It didn't come with a power cable, a mouse, or a keyboard. However, I did have an aftermarket power cable, so all I needed to do was to buy a Apple keyboard and a mouse. So I wanted to see if I could make this nice 4K Apple iMac setup for under $250. So I went ahead and I ordered a keyboard and a mouse for 30 bucks and the iMac for about $209. And after about 3 days, the box finally arrived and it's in perfect condition.
Few moments later.
So here we have a mid-2017 iMac, and as you can see, it came in a giant box. But here it is. Now, this thing didn't take long. It only took about 2 days to get here. As you can see, it's got the Thunderbolt ports, 4 USB ports, an SD card slot, and a a Ethernet port, not a Thunderbolt. But it doesn't come with anything. It's literally just the computer itself. It doesn't come with a cable, which I do have an extra one. And it doesn't come with a keyboard or a mouse, but that should not be an issue. And of course, this is the 21-inch because it does not have the accessible RAM door on it. But of course, being a 2017, it's super thin on the sides, and so it has a pretty new look to it. But this thing is in pretty good condition, and I hope it's the 4K version. All I know is that it's got 16 gigabytes of RAM in it. I'm not sure of the storage, but I hope it's the 4K version because that is a lot nicer than the non-Retina version. So here it is in its full glory under my lamps. I don't know what's going on here, but it's all over the sides of this. I've never seen that before, but I don't think it's really anything that'll affect the screen. But we can only know if we turn it on. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my cable, which is somewhere in this mess. Got it. All right, so I just plugged it in. Let's go ahead and see if it turns on. There we go. So this thing's taking a while to boot, and I believe that's because it has one of those stupid mechanical hard drives. Now, the hard drive in this thing is one of these, not a solid-state drive, which a solid-state drive doesn't have this spinning mechanism, which makes it really, really, really slow, which is why all of these in here are just junk. Solid-state drives look more fancy like this one, and they also look like this. Anyways, back to the iMac. This thing was not reset to factory, so I don't think there's an iCloud on here because it just says user, but that's always a concern. So let's go ahead and see if I can guess the password. No way! So without an SSD, this thing is super slow. The mechanical hard drive is really something that should be changed out, and really any Mac model that is older than 2020 and doesn't have an SSD already. Alright, so here it is, and from the listing, apparently this is the 16 gigabyte RAM one, which I hope because this model is just super slow without that. And it is the 16 gigabyte RAM one with Radeon Pro graphics, which isn't really a horrible graphics card, but it's all right. And a 3 gigahertz quad-core Intel i5, which is fairly good. We'll go ahead and run a Geekbench score in here just to see what we get. And this is the Retina 4K iMac, so that makes this one worth a whole lot more than the traditional crappy 1K iMac. And it looks like we have a 1 terabyte hard drive, which obviously is not an SSD, but it's 1 terabyte, so as long as you're not doing anything, crazy, that should be just fine. Although hooking up an SSD in here would make it 30 times better. But with Apple's stupid screen design, I would have to cut open the adhesive just to change out the hard drive to an SSD, so I'm just going to leave it as a hard drive and not swap it out for an SSD. Which is not something I wanted to do, so that is why I opted for the 16 gigabyte model right here. Which is obviously going to make it a little bit better. However, not, a whole lot better. Let's see how long it takes to load up Safari. That wasn't horrible, but it's still kind of slow. So this iMac runs the latest version of macOS Ventura. It does not update to Sonoma. So Ventura is the latest that this will naturally run. However, we can download macOS Sonoma via OpenCore Legacy. However, I never usually do that on computers that I resell, mainly because it can just cause problems and make the buyers super confused and unhappy. But let's go ahead and run Geekbench 6, which is the newest Geekbench out, and I want to go ahead and see what scores we get. Now, even though this Mac didn't come with any accessories, like, at all, it was $209, which is pretty decent, especially for one of these models. They usually go for around $250 to $360. So scoring one of these for around $200 is pretty good, especially considering it's Apple and it's only about 7 years old, which for Apple is not bad at all. So for the single core score on the CPU, we get a similar score to the MacBook Pro. However, when it comes to the multi-core score with the quad-core i5, we get a pretty significant jump in power than the 2017 MacBook Pro. Now, obviously, these things came out in the same time, so they have pretty similar processors. However, this one's rocking a quad-core versus the typical MacBook, which would run a dual-core i5. And for OpenCL score for the GPU, we get more than double than the MacBook Pro, which has an Intel Iris graphics card. This has the Radeon Pro 555 2GB, and that is a pretty decent OpenCL score. Being 100% honest, for a Radeon Pro 555, that is pretty good for a graphics card in a 7-year-old computer. That's a pretty great score, 13,398. So even to this day, this computer still has pretty good modern performance for its hardware. So I want to see if this machine is still usable to this day. As you can see, putting this up here next to my 27-inch iMac, there's a pretty significant difference in the two height-wise. 27-inch just swallows it up. All right, 27-inch has been removed, and 21.5-inch will take its place. This thing is just horrible, way too slow. I've been sitting here for like 2 minutes now, still waiting. And after many years, this thing finally loaded up. Now, I want to test this Mac's capability, and I'm going to try and install macOS Sonoma via OpenCore Legacy, which is a patcher that lets you install the newest versions of macOS onto unsupported devices, like this 2017 iMac here. Now, OpenCore Legacy is free to download online. All you need is just a 3.0 USB thumb drive, which it will install the software on and basically use as a bootable drive to install macOS. And with a new copy of macOS Sonoma, we can put things on this Mac that are not accessible, like some newer apps can be ran with the OpenCore Legacy patcher, which makes this device a whole lot more usable. I ended up moving this thing upstairs to my kitchen because I was getting horrible megabytes per second in my basement. And here we go, we are setting it up on macOS Sonoma. It's a tad bit laggy, but that's expected from a patched software on an unsupported device. However, it seems to be working just fine with no issues. And here we go. As you can see, it might be a little bit laggy. It's not as prevalent in here, but as you can see, it seems to be running just fine. Everything seems to be good to go. Looks like all the patchers are in. However, I'm going to go ahead and run the patchers one more time, the post-install root patch, just to make sure that everything is running as it should. Now, I probably should not have done that because that ended up creating a whole lot more problems than expected. While doing the post-install root patch, everything was going just fine, but once I turned the computer back on, we got the prohibition sign, and that is not good. And like every normal person, I turned it off and turned it back on again, just to see if that would work, but in the end, it just went back to that stupid screen. Oh, okay. So, yeah, the first restart after redoing the patchers is not doing so hot. So I brought this piece of junk back into my office so that I could reinstall the newest version of macOS Ventura back onto this iMac. And the recovery assistant brought us to macOS Ventura as I thought, so I'm going to go ahead and put in my Wi-Fi and then reset this thing completely multiple times just to make sure that all of the pre-boot stuff is off, and then we can put macOS Ventura back on this device. So I'm going to let this run, and then by tomorrow I will have the new keyboard and the mouse to complete our $250 Mac setup.
Few moments later.
Alright, so we just got in the, I believe this is the mouse that I purchased to make this setup complete. Here it is. Oh. So now we have the keyboard. This keyboard was about 20 bucks. And it's a bag inside of a bag. These are all of the bags that were used to store that device. So here it is. Obviously there's no batteries in it, but so far it looks good and it feels good. I'm gonna plug everything in, make sure it's all ready to go. So it came with batteries, which obviously don't work. And lo and behold, after waiting forever, literally none of these keys work. Look, I'm just gonna press all of them. Nothing. And of course, I was sent a broken keyboard, even though they had many of these keyboards that were apparently fully working and tested, just like the time when I bought a 2017 MacBook Pro that was completely busted, even though they said it worked great. It's just typical eBay things that happen. But I was able to return the keyboard after they tried to offer me a $10 refund and have me keep the broken keyboard even though it's broken and I can't use it. But anyways, this is a 2017 iMac and it is working great. It's not something that you want to do video editing or photography on, like Photoshop and stuff like that. You would want to use something like a 2017 Intel i7 with an upgraded SSD and 16 gigabytes of RAM. That is something that will work just fine with those applications. However, this quad-core i5 with a normal spinny hard drive and 16 gigabytes of RAM just isn't going to cut it. It's a great computer for web browsing, documents, things like that. It's just not meant to handle heavy applications. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and please give me some video ideas. That would be absolutely amazing. I apologize for the late upload. Usually I upload on the weekends. However, I ran into a bunch of stuff with school and work and all types of things. So anyways, thank you guys for watching and see you in the next video.